Hi. You guys like my new set? Me and my wife worked on a project recently, and that required us to purchase a seamless, which is what you see behind me here. What also happened is we ended up rearranging the entire office. My desk used to be over there, and her desk used to be behind me here. But now my desk is by the window, which used to be the background of my other set, and her desk is over there. Things are always evolving, but I like what we have going on here today. I feel like my background is pretty neat. I want to talk about some photos that I think are interesting, and I want to talk about why I think those photos are interesting. So let's begin. This photo I'm excited to share with you guys. I keep coming across it in my feed on Instagram, and I love it. It's fantastic. It makes me happy. We have what looks like a train scene. We have a businessman, and then we have a little girl, and we're angled down. It looks like maybe a 50 millimeter. I'm not sure. What do you guys think about that? Really like these shots where there's a lot of context cut off and with downward angles like this. I've always loved shots like this when they're executed well. Pointing down like this can be a really good way to cut out unwanted clutter in an environment and make for a more exciting frame. And this is also why it's a good reason to gain some elevation if you can while you're running around shooting, because if you can point down on things, there's a lot of things that go away that you don't necessarily want. Using this technique in this case has allowed us to focus in on this little girl and create a personal connection with her. Another thing that creates personal connection is the fact that she's looking at the camera or just off to the left of the camera, either way. Nice direct expression towards us, and that's always a good way to connect with somebody in a photo. I love the way the hands work together here. You have the guy's bigger hands, and she's resting her head on his hands, and then you have her little hand just underneath touching his hand. I think it's so precious. I also think the light, the colors, the post-processing tones in this are fantastic. We have a lot of very pleasing contrast between the cool tones of the entire scene and the warm skin tones here that contrast against it. Really makes her jump out of her and the hand from the fellow jump out of the scene. Let's say you're a photographer and you have more time and flexibility to construct a scene in a much more in-depth way than, say, a street photographer would be able to do. You're in a studio, you're shooting an environmental portrait. One fantastic technique is to use colors for the environment that contrast well with the colors of the person's skin, the subject's skin. And here we see that done, but in the world, in a live action setting. And that's impressive. These skin tones make me sick in the best way. I'm gonna go vomit with joy. I'm back from vomiting. So I love this photo. It was a wonderful, gentle moment captured, and the timing to capture this expression, capture all the elements in the photo, the way that it was captured is quite perfect. So I deem this a perfect photo. Next. Okay, next we have this one of a fellow shooting a basketball into a hoop from the right side to the left side. We get this sense that this basketball is flying through the air, and it's gonna land somewhere. You know, it might not go in, and that's part of the tension. It's like, what's gonna happen? Where's it gonna go? One thing that's fantastic about this photo is the time of day that it was shot. Now, you could have tried a lot of different times for when this photo could have worked. I mean, it could have worked a little bit earlier in that, I'm assuming this is an evening, I'm assuming. It could have happened a little bit earlier in the evening. You could have flipped the sun around, shot in the morning, and not had a silhouette, or you could have shot at noon. I feel like this photo could have worked in a lot of different circumstances, but what we have here is quite fantastic. We have a lovely silhouette, and the silhouette is a great way to minimize a frame, make a frame less busy, get out things that could interfere, but primarily it minimizes the color palette in this case, because all we have is some beautiful sunset, orangish, yellowish, some purplish hues, and then black. Or gray, really. Sometimes I say when I have a color in my color palette that I use a lot whenever I'm working on my website, or I'm working on you know, text for this or something like that, backgrounds for the video. I call it light black. One thing that adds some intrigue to this photo for me is the oddness of the basketball hoop with the big long curve. It's not just straight up and down. I think it would have been fine if that was the case, but that's a nice little pinch of salt. We have a very aesthetically beautiful frame, and we have action mixed in, which adds some drama to the mix, and when you put those things together, you get something really nice a lot of times. This photo could have just been of the fellow and the ball, right? We cut off the left-hand side, push in, but because we have this goal also in the frame, we see where the ball is going, and so there's a sense of an implied narrative occurring in this still frame because of that. And it adds more context to the photo to create a bit more of an engaging quality and, like I said, a narrative. Because of this light and time of day, you also get this dreamy feel, and that's something that you're going to achieve at a time of day like this, as opposed to you know, earlier in the day, even an hour or 2 hours earlier in the day. Excellent framing, excellent light, excellent capturing of action, excellent implication of narrative, excellent doobly-doo. Here we have a wonderful photo by Dan Tom. I love Dan Tom's work. He is a unique photographer. His style is very distinct. And there are a lot of things that make that up, but let's just talk about a couple as we talk about this photo. One thing that sets Dan apart for me is his very distinctive tones. You don't see a lot of photos that look quite like this. You guys might, but I don't really look at this and go, oh, that looks like a film, like he's trying to create some sort of specific old school look that is very popular. It feels very distinctive and very well thought out, and I don't know exactly what he would be pulling from to create this look. I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts. It was a very good move on his part to create a distinctive and also cohesive look. I've found creating a cohesive look for my photos to be a very difficult task. My subject matter is always changing. My light is always changing. Some days I want to take this kind of photo, other days I want to take this kind of photo. Somehow he manages to create photos that connect together beautifully on his Instagram feed. I'm very impressed by that. I think, of course, that has a lot to do with post-processing, but that also has a lot to do with the time of day that he goes out to shoot. And so I would encourage me, you, everyone, really think about the time of day that you're going out to shoot if you are trying to create a more distinctive look for your photos. Another thing that's great about this photo is you can see that he elevated himself from all of the things that he's photographing. And I found, I mentioned this earlier on in the video, but I found this to be such a useful technique for creating photos that have more of a liveliness to them, more of a visual engagement to them. Get off the ground a little bit. Get off the ground. We notice something in the scene that is something that could potentially work against us when we're trying to take a photo, and that is clutter. There's a lot of things happening in this scene. But he was able to create a pleasing repetition in the chaos of the boats here. The fact that there are so many boats that look a lot alike, and there are a lot of different colors that play well together. There's differences, but there's also similarities. The fact that the boats are extremely intriguing. Like, for example, if I took this photo in Florida, I would get a lot of white boats that are made of plastic. Also, it's intriguing that they're all pointing different directions. There's a sort of organization that occurs in a country like America of everything. One of the things I noticed when I flew back from Haiti, I think it might have been the first time I flew back, is I was flying over Florida. I think it was South Florida. And I noticed how organized everything was. That's because I was coming from a place that was very all over the place. It was a lot more chaotic. You get a wonderful sense of chaotic humanity here. And even though there's a lot going on, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of diversity of objects and things, he was able to make it work. and that's a talent. That's a talented thing to accomplish. But it seems that he was quite helped out by a truly unique environment. This looks like a really visually interesting place. So the feeling we end up with is not this disorderly array of color that causes our eyes to bleed, but a bit more of a beautiful symphony. Next, we have a photo by Jordan Hammond, who also has a very distinct style. If you have not seen his work, scroll through it. It is fantastic. But we have an overhead drone, I'm assuming, photograph. He uses drones a lot for his photos, or aircrafts in general, and he uses them very thoughtfully. He takes that elevation thing to a whole new level. I'm pretty sure by looking at his other photos that this photo was taken on a beach, and so we have a pretty extravagant environment here. It might be a little bit harder to find this in like Chicago, although Kansas, they're known for cattle wandering on beaches. Now, while this photo would have worked without these beautiful long shadows, they certainly add a lot, and this is a result oftentimes of really good planning, going out at the time of day and making sure that all the elements are going to align correctly. How he accomplished this photo, I'm not actually sure. I feel like I would try this photo and it would be wrong. One thing that does help and makes the job easier is, once again, getting elevation and creating a bit more of an exciting angle and cutting out things that you don't necessarily want. Although I'm pretty sure the environment here around this scene was pretty banging. Another thing that getting up high and shooting straight down like this can do is create a more minimalistic scene. And like I said, it's a great way to organize a photo. So if you have a drone, throw that baby up in the air, get going, because you might be able to take a rather complex, disorderly environment and make it feel orderly and maybe even minimalistic. Perfect conditions, perfect composition, perfect shadows. Oh my gosh. And there, I just realized, little point of green on the hat. That's nice. Great photo. Okay, then we have this photo, which I think is fantastic. We have what looks like an old church in front of some giant nuclear power plant cooling towers. Really interesting scene that you will not find everywhere. Trust me, I've looked. And of course, one of the first things we notice about this photo is a powerful juxtaposition between a rather inviting, pleasant scene on the bottom and then a rather ominous industrial scene on the top. And you can see that the color tones are contrasting to accentuate that, where on the bottom we have some rather warm tones. On the top we have a lot of cool tones, lots of grays, and the blue sky goes along with those grays, cool, warm, juxtaposed. Whereas in the previous photo, you may want to go out in the morning or the evening to capture those long shadows and very pleasant and smooth light. Here we have a bit more of a surreal scene, and so I think this like midday type of lighting that we have here really helps accentuate that. This is a good way to light this type of photo. Also, beautiful lean framing, nice tight focal length, and this would fit right in. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the Liminal Spaces Reddit page, but this would fit right in there, although I don't think the term liminal quite explains what it is that is the phenomenon that people call liminal spaces. If you go look at there's videos as well, pretty interesting dynamic that happens when you look at kind of strange empty photos, but this could go there. Okay, next we have this photo, and I really like photos that use an overwhelming set of a certain type of tones. So what I mean by that in this case is that this scene is incredibly blue, and it fills up the frame, it overwhelms the frame. But then we have these little spots of warm light contrasting against the blue. I always find that to be quite pleasing. If these little lights weren't on, I think the photo would lose a lot. It would work, it'd just be a different kind of photo. It would be quite flat, but this really breaks it up and makes it not monotonous, this amount of blueness and coolness. But it only takes a couple of things to break that up and make it feel very balanced and engaging. We have some excellent thoughtful framing here. I love the placement of the person. It's great that the person is where they are as opposed to maybe being on the left hand side of the dock. I think the photo would have been a little bit off balance, but in this case it's beautifully balanced. This is a very gentle scene. I find it quite calming, and this would be a great photo for like a reading room or something, right? You can feel and smell and hear this scene, and anytime a photographer is able to generate that effect in the viewer, that's a good thing. We have a beautiful play of shapes and light here, and something I noticed is that the hat that the person is wearing mirrors the things that are over the top of the lights. I find that quite wonderful. You can see it more clearly with the light all the way at the end, which happens to be off, and I don't know why, but I find it interesting for some reason that light happens to be off while the other two are on, and the person is silhouetted, not lit up. That's interesting to me. I don't know what to make of it. Absolutely, absolutely perfect. I would put this on my wall. Okay, I think that's it. I would be curious to know of a story of a photo that you took that you feel like turned out quite perfectly. That would be a lot of fun. Let's learn from each other. If you enjoyed this video, if you would hit the like button or the subscribe button if you're interested in seeing more of my videos, that would mean a lot. But either way, I love you guys. I hope you have a lovely day. Goodbye.